OK. Let's talk about your brief now, transport. It's fair to say that some of the transport announcements you made this week have confused some people. On Wednesday, the government released a document which promised £100 million in funding for a mass transit system to revolutionise travel in and around Bristol. Now, that document was pretty swiftly removed from the government website and a new one put up in its place. So can you clear things up for viewers? Is Bristol going to get a new mass transit system?
Yeah, so we published my department published a document which set out very clearly what we're going to spend the £36 billion on that we're saving from cancelling the second phase of HS2. The money that was promised for Bristol is £100 million extra for the elected mayor of the West of England Combined Authority, and that's money that he will have available to spend on his projects, including on a mass transit system, which is already, some of those things are already being delivered. I was in Bristol myself relatively recently, opening a new station as part of that implementation of increased transport projects.
Right.
Except so it includes things that already exist. And again, we were already promised Northern Powerhouse Rail, for example. There was already plans and money and all of the planning set aside to be able to get Northern Powerhouse Rail in the north. And now you're saying we're going to have Network North instead. It's just a rebranding of the same thing. That's not the funding being moved around. And we've already spaffed away a load of funding on the stuff that we're not going to be able to get back in terms of private contractor rates for whatever has been done already on the route from Birmingham to Manchester. A bunch of made up stuff, or things that already exist, or things that they'll never get done. It's just all just complete nonsense.
It's going to happen.
So there's £100 million extra available for the West of England mayor for him to spend on his projects, one of which that he is developing, and I know because I've spoken to him about it, is to deliver a mass transit system in Bristol. Look, I'd make a virtue of the fact that one of the things we're able to do is give significant amounts of extra money to elected mayors for them to spend on the priorities that they determine are right for the parts of the country that they represent, rather than all those decisions being taken at Westminster.
Understood, but it went from a clear promise from you and the Prime Minister to a maybe.
No, it's a clear promise of £100 million for the West of England mayor for him to spend on his priorities, and one of his priorities is delivering.
Yeah, it is a real position, yeah.
That mass transit system.
Fair enough. Which is not what the original document said. Let me ask something else. Again, the deleted...
Love it. I love that tactic of just saying, you're lying, let's move on.
Document said the Leamside line, which is in the northeast of England, closed in 1964, will be reopened. Will it?
Yeah, so we published in our document the plans that we're going to give a significant amount of money, £1.8 billion going to the North East elected mayor. And one of those things that I know is a priority in that area is the Leamside line. And we're going to start working on a business case for that. So if the North of East mayor decides to deliver that, he now has the funds to do so.
So it's not promised then. It's going to be at the discretion of those local mayors. And this is what it is. They know they've been rumbled on this Network North plan, right? They know they've been rumbled that it's all a bunch of made up bollocks. And none of it is true. None of it's real. It's all just to cope, essentially, for the fact that people are pissed off with the cancellation of HS2. So they've hastily scrambled together something. And then because they know they can't deliver on any of those promises, if they just say, oh, well, we've given money to those mayors and they've not done anything, they can completely wash their hands of any failures on policy on this one, because they can always blame the elected mayors of those areas instead of the fact that they promised a bunch of shit that they're now not delivering.
So again, it sounds like it's gone from a clear promise, a clear announcement earlier this week, to we're working on a business plan.
Well, no.
Let me ask you about Manchester.
The point is, significant amounts of money are now available with the cancellation of HS2 to give that money to elected...
It's all fiscal expansion. All of this is capital investment. This is not money in a pot somewhere that you get rid of in one place and it appears in another place. It's all capital investment. It all comes from fiscal expansion anyway. It depends on how much you want to do with it. So there's no reason why you couldn't continue building HS2 yet also put capital investment into local transport plans as well.
In all parts of the country, whether it's the North East, Manchester or the West Midlands, for them to spend on the priorities they determine are important for the people they represent. That's much better than it all being decided by the government.
Okay, so if it's much better, then you admit that you lied. Admit that you were just making up before that didn't exist.
But if that is the point, then why do you release a document saying the Leamside line, closed in 1964, will also be reopened? Why release a document saying Bristol's going to get a new mass transit system?
Because we gave some examples.
And why delete it?
We gave some examples to people about the sorts of things, and we know these things are priorities locally, the sorts of things that money could be spent on to bring it to life for people.
I've got the
And we
original
know those
document,
are
if I may,
local
Mr. Harper.
priorities.
OK, they weren't examples. I've got the original document. It's right here. The Leams, I'm sorry to keep repeating the same point, but the Leamside line, closed in 1964, will be reopened. Bristol will get a new mass transit system. Let me ask you about Manchester.
She's so good. Just replace Laura Kay. Even if we have to put Victoria Derbyshire into like a Laura Kay skin suit so that we can get her presenting every single Sunday. She is just like the only good interviewer left on the BBC.
In the deleted document, you promised a link road between the M62 and the M60, a project that was already announced back in 2020. The new document talks about 2 projects in Manchester. Which new roads is Manchester going to get?
Well, look, just on the point about things that have been announced before, often projects will be announced and there'll be development funding for them to be a detailed plan to be worked up. But part of the point about the extra money that's available is it's now available to actually deliver these projects. So there are a number of projects which had been developed but hadn't got any further than that. And the advantage of cancelling HS2, the second phase, means we can now invest them and deliver them.
Yeah, it's a problem with funding, but you don't need to cancel HS2 to make sure that they get more funding. These two things are not mutually exclusive.
Right, so you announced something in 2020 that you were never going to be able to deliver, but now you've cancelled HS2 from Birmingham to Manchester. You can deliver it. Is that what you're saying?
When you deliver a lot of these transport projects, you have to provide funding and
you start a lot of transport projects.
You start developing plans for them, but then you have to make available the funding to deliver them. Let me give you another example from last week. There's a very good plan to expand capacity.
Yeah. How about stop talking about the thing that's dumb, that we should never have said and that we lied about? Can I direct you to something that's actually maybe close to being true? No, actually, we'll continue to talk about the lies, thanks.
In the east of England, in the Ely area, for both transport, for passenger and freight capacity on the railways. That plan's been well worked up. We wanted to deliver it, but until we had the funds available from cancelling the second phase of HS2, we didn't have the funds available to do it. We're now able to commit to delivering that plan. That'll be a huge benefit to that part of the country and for growing the economy. So that's the difference. Cancelling phase 2 of HS2.
True. One line in Ely is definitely going to grow the economy more than a gigantic high-speed rail infrastructure project that links the south and the north.
It frees up funds to actually deliver some of these projects that we've wanted to do, but HS2 was consuming all of the available transport spending.
Also, I'd like to point out as well, even if you do believe that there's just like a singular pot that all of the money comes from for these infrastructure projects, even if you truly believe that, then even then the blame still lies with the Conservative government, because they are the ones who have let the costs of HS2 spiral out of control by relying on private contractors and continually pandering to NIMBYs and chopping and changing how they're doing things, even from the London to Birmingham line. It's a catastrophic level of mismanagement and overspend by a government that does not care about fiscal responsibility. It only cares about what is politically viable for them and their mates who donate to them in the development sector as well. Let's not forget those people. It's only the reason that we've got here that we can't have both, by their own metrics. So even by their own metrics, they failed. And even then, as Donny Marco points out in chat now, and even after failing on a national scale for both local and national transport projects, they've now gone back on promises they've made literally a few days ago to then say, oh, well, we're devolving this to local authorities and local mayors, who they know have no money, that they're just giving up a smaller pot of money to that's not really going to be enough to complete the project. And then if they do fail, and when they obviously will fail because of the lack of state support and because of cutbacks to local funding already, they can then blame the local authorities and the mayors instead of themselves, who are to blame for basically everything that's happening here.
So you shouldn't really have announced, for example, the link road between the M60 and the M62 back in 2020. But let's move on. I'm trying to get you to be clear, because, as you know, you were there. Rishi Sunak claimed he was the change candidate on Wednesday. He said he's going to do things differently. But just from this one interview, there is a kind of pattern, isn't there? Rishi Sunak backed HS2, then he scrapped it. Boris Johnson backed a new station in Bradford, then he scrapped it. Then Liz Truss reinstated it, then Rishi Sunak as PM scrapped it. Now he says he's doing it again. It's the same with
imagine these people trying to pin down Keir Starmer on flip-flopping. If these people had a consistent set of political positions that they were advocating for and the reasons for it, they'd be able to make those arguments. But they're just as flip-floppy as Keir Starmer is.
One, making it a dual carriageway from Northumberland to Scotland. It's the same with electrifying the train line to Hull. Is it on? Is it off? The announcements you've made this week, you can't guarantee any of them will happen, which is not really a change. It's more inconsistency and more uncertainty for voters.
No, it's not. It's actually demonstrating that by cancelling the second phase of HS2, and look, and I accept not everyone will agree with that, but because the facts change, we made a different decision. What that's enabled us to do is free up money to invest in transport projects across the country. You mentioned Bradford. I went to Bradford on Thursday. I met the Labour leader of the council there. I met the West Yorkshire mayor to talk about this project. They welcomed that investment. They've got ambitious plans for the city, and this extra transport investment means that those plans are now able to be delivered. They'll see more growth in that city, which is welcome, not just for people who live in the city, but in the...
The thing as well about HS2 is it was going to take loads of strain off of the regular tracks for both passenger and freight rail. So, like, now they're going to be building a bunch of other rails, but it's not going to take the strain off the other local, widely used rail lines because they've cancelled the northern leg of HS2. Oh, stupid. It's such a Dumbo.
Surrounding area. So they welcomed those plans, but we weren't able to fund them until we made the decision that we did to cancel the second phase of HS2. So I think that's very clear. It's a decision taken, it's funding freed up, and clear plans about what we're going to deliver instead, and that's been welcomed.
Thank you very much for talking to us this morning. Thank
Pleasure.
you. Mark Harper, who is the Transport Secretary.
Wow, that was a mess. Again, really want Vicky Derbyshire back on the next one because she's a real tour de force in these interviews, much more so than anybody else on the BBC, so well done.